What's the darkest thing jealousy ever made you do? I grew up in my brother's shadow, even though we were only 2 years apart. Josh was the golden child, top of his class, perfect teeth. Meanwhile, I barely passed math and couldn't hold a job longer than 3 months. But the turning point came last year, right after I got rejected for another apartment because of my credit score. My account was in overdraft because I owed 3 months of rent and my car had just been repossessed. But I remember sitting in the library because my phone was dead, and they had free Wi-Fi, and I opened Josh's resume on my old laptop, but I wasn't planning anything criminal at first. I was just curious. But then I saw the section where he'd listed his student ID, plus a reference number from a background check he once did for a finance internship, and that's when it hit me. I could maybe use that info to apply for a personal loan, but just enough to get me back on my feet. So I did. I applied online using his name and basic info, plus a fake email address I created that looked close enough to his real one, and it worked. Almost. The application was flagged by the bank's fraud department because of an address mismatch, and they asked for a copy of his ID and a recent utility bill. I panicked for a second, but then remembered that Josh had once sent me a scan of his license when we planned a trip together years ago. So I dug it out of my old Gmail inbox and photoshopped the address. But then came something I didn't expect. Because it was a loan over $10,000, the bank required biometric verification, a DNA test. Not common for identity theft prevention, but apparently some banks partner with third-party services now, especially for high-value loans, to prevent scams. So I sent in the sample, and I thought I'd get flagged for fraud, so I was ready to run. But that's not what happened. Instead, I got a weird email from the third-party service asking me to confirm some details about my identity. They didn't say much, but the wording made me nervous.
Your submitted DNA does not match the genetic profile previously recorded for Josh. This may indicate a significant biological difference. Please contact support.
But I didn't contact support. Instead, I went to Josh's place. We hadn't talked in weeks, so when I showed up, he looked confused, but he let me in. I didn't know how to say it, so I just asked him directly if he knew we might not be related, but he laughed and thought I was messing around. But I showed him the email and his face changed. He told me he'd taken a DNA test in college, but never thought anything of it, and he asked me if I had ever taken one, and I said no. But then we both sat there in silence, and the next day I bought a test, but this time under my real name, and waited 3 weeks. But when the results came back, I opened them on my phone in a gas station parking lot, and it said I had zero connection to Josh. So that night, I confronted my mom. But she didn't lie or even seem surprised. She just told me something I still can't fully wrap my head around. When she and my dad were having fertility issues, they decided to adopt quietly. So I was adopted from another state, arranged through an agency that no longer exists, and there's no contact with the birth parents. She told me she planned to tell me one day, but the years kept passing, and Josh was born 2 years later naturally, so he was their miracle baby. I cried hearing that, but a few days later something happened I didn't expect. A woman showed up at our door and said her name was Maria and asked if my parents used an agency called New Hope Adoptions in the early 2000s. But I didn't answer, so she looked at me and said,
I think you're my son.